You are listening to This is Oklahoma, hosted by Mike Hearn, telling stories of Oklahomans and those that have made it their home.
Before we get into today's episode, I want to tell you a little bit about our current sponsors, the Oklahoma Hall of Fame. As you well know, if you've been following This is Oklahoma, they've been a huge part of this podcast. So this podcast is presented by the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, telling an Oklahoma story through its people since 1927. For more information on the Hall of Fame, go to www.oklahomahof.com and follow them on Instagram for daily updates at oklahomahof. Also, for the podcast, a new sponsor, RCB Bank. Since 1936, RCB Bank has offered progressive products and a friendly service. Come in today to find out more about their loan promotion on new, used, refinanced cars, boats, campers, and ATVs. Visit RCB Bank to learn more. RCB Bank, that's my bank. With approved credit, restrictions apply. Now, let's get into today's episode.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of This is Oklahoma. Mike Hearn here, your host. Back with another episode down at the Bedford studio today with Garrett Mills to talk about, I guess, some football and then some RibCrib as well, right?
A little bit of both.
Thanks for coming down. Really appreciate you making the journey. I know, obviously, you probably got some busy stuff to take care of today, and I'm glad we could make this happen and fit it into your schedule. But I guess before we talk about what you're currently doing, doing a bit of research. Born and raised in Oklahoma?
Yep. Yeah. Tulsa, went to Jenks.
Okay.
Jenks, K through 12.
So high school football was like big time, right?
You've learned that since moving here, I guess.
That's one of the things I've learned, is that like there's a powerhouse up in that kind of part of Oklahoma that takes care of football every year.
Yeah.
Right? There's a couple. Was it Jenks and then Union? And I had a buddy of mine who went to Union, so he was telling me all about it. So
those are the two big ones.
Yeah.
When it comes to football, the east side of the state has tended to dominate, and I was fortunate to be a part of that.
Yeah.
Both as a kid, growing up in that culture, and then obviously getting to high school and being a part of those programs. It certainly has shaped who I am today, but obviously good memories, good friendships, good camaraderie, all the great things that come with team sports and winning came together, at Jenks as it relates to football.
Yeah, it's one of the things when I meet kids and I ask them, what they did or when they grow up, I'm like, they never played any team sports growing up. And I played golf, so it was team to an extent, but it's still an individual sport, and I kind of do sometimes miss like that team atmosphere, right? You're in the locker room, you've just had a great win, or you're fighting, you're coming from halftime and you're down, and it's a bond that you just can't really replicate, isn't it?
No, I think no question. Now that I have kids in team sports, seeing them develop, seeing them high five, seeing them win and lose together, all those memories that I had both as a kid and then obviously fortunate enough to do that as a profession, being a part of a team, specifically in sports, it's just hard to replicate in any other environment. We try to in business, but there's something about sports in terms of the work required, the physical kind of exertion that it takes to compete. And then, again, winning and losing as a team, it's hard to replicate that.
Right, yeah. So growing up, in and around Jenks area, you go to high school, brothers and sisters, or you only child?
No, I'm third of four siblings in the family.
So you weren't really forgotten about because you're not the middle child, but you were somewhat somewhat forgotten about, right?
Yeah, somewhat. Yeah.
By the time your parents had you, like, oh no, we know how to do this.
Yeah.
Now you can take care of yourself.
Well, my dad played college football, and I was the oldest son. So I have two older sisters and a little brother. So, I think my other siblings would argue I definitely was not forgotten about.
Good. Yeah.
But that's just how it goes, I guess.
So dad's in the football scene. I guess you going to practice, going to watching him, and then just watching games as well with him on the weekend. And that was your childhood. Yeah,
he played at the University of Tulsa. He was from Arizona originally and came over to Oklahoma to play. That's obviously what brought our family here before I was part of the family. And he played at TU. So, growing up, he obviously encouraged us in sports, and football was a part of my childhood. And then, obviously when the University of Tulsa offered me a scholarship, it was an incredible thing because that's where both my parents went.
Right.
So it was an easy decision.
Close to home, easy, no brainer, right? For mom and dad, they're like, hey, this is awesome because, if your mom, the same situation that I kind of had when I was moving out here, my mom was like, do you really want to go?
Yeah.
I'm sure she would have really appreciated the fact that I'd stayed, but now she gets to visit and she's happy to visit whenever. So I guess when you're in high school, you're on the football team. Are you playing a bunch of different positions, or you kind of narrowed into one at that time?
No, I played offense and defense at Jenks. I actually got recruited both as a linebacker and as tight end. I ended up choosing tight end. That's what TU recruited me as. But yeah, I was fortunate to play multiple positions. But again, it was a stacked team. We had a lot of good athletes. Guys that signed with OU, Texas, OSU. My senior year. So I actually wasn't heavily recruited myself. I would argue I was maybe the 5th best player on my team in high school. So, again, we had a very successful team, successful program, fun to be a part of.
Yeah. When you're in high school, are you thinking this is going to be my profession? Like, are you like 15, 16, 17,
No, not at all. Obviously, maybe it's because I didn't have long-term goals. But, in high school, it was just, hey, I'd love to compete at college at the college level if I could. And so the goal was to kind of get a scholarship to play in college. And then, you arrive at TU. Me personally, I didn't arrive at TU saying, all right, I'll do 4 years of this and then play in the NFL. Again, maybe it was my own short-sightedness, but the road to the NFL just kind of developed year after year, and obviously the passion for the sport just grew and grew, and obviously it came with some success on the field, but it really took time. Full 4 years to kind of look up and go, well, wait a minute, maybe I could do this after college.
So when you go into college, then you're thinking, I'm going to get a degree and I'm going to go into whatever business.
Whatever.
Yeah. And you just kind of probably the same as I was when I came to college. It's like, we'll just figure it out. Yeah.
I mean, I think naturally as a student athlete, the athlete portion is such an important part. So it takes up a lot of your life, it takes up a lot of your time. Yeah. You're committed to it. We talked about the team aspects, so you're committed to your team. But you kind of sports is the means of being in college and going to school. I didn't necessarily, go thinking I'm developing myself athletically to go to play beyond college. It was more, I play sports while I'm in college, but I'm in college figuring out what I want to do with my life. Yeah. And it just so happened I had the option or had the good fortune of being able to play after college as almost a side benefit of just my work during college.
Right. Yeah. So was there, I guess, a kind of moment that while you were in TU, you're like, oh, hang on, I could actually do this, right? If you don't go in and you're not thinking I'm going to go to the league or I'm not going to do this as a profession, you're kind of like looking for ideas and what are my interests, what do I want to do? Do I do a business degree, whatever? There must be like a light bulb moment. You're like, hang on a second, I'm good enough to do this. Yeah,
I mean, I think, even though I was all conference my sophomore year, my junior year as well, and I still, for some reason, I was undersized. I don't know if that had something to do with it. Obviously, I was at a small Division I school, and I remember going into my senior year, my tight ends coach kind of sat me down and he was like, listen, if you work at this thing, I think you can be an All-American. I think you can play after college. And I think that was kind of the light bulb moment where I was like, oh, wait a minute. In fact, I haven't really told this story, but after a game my junior year, I think we were playing Rice at home, and I remember after the game, the coach, one of the coaches from the opposing team, came up to me and he was like, "Hey, I hope you leave school early so we don't have to face you next year." And I'm thinking to myself, what is this guy talking about? Yeah. Like, leave school early? I didn't really have NFL on my radar, yet he's kind of sitting there thinking I may have the opportunity to leave early. Obviously, I didn't choose to leave early, but the fact that he said that to me certainly opened my eyes to kind of say, well, wait a minute, maybe this can become bigger than just 4 years at TU.
And you've got outside people coming in that have never met you before that are like, hang on, you're really good at this, right? Like, you got a chance. Like, that gave you self-belief and more realization, rather than family's always going to tell you you're doing a great job, right? Yeah. So having outside factors coming in and saying, wow, like, so that puts it on your radar, and you start taking, you probably think, I'm going to really work a little harder and spend more time in the gym, be the first one there, last one to leave kind of thing, and you start really investing in it.
Yeah, I think success, in many ways, success kind of begets success, meaning it's motivational to continue to achieve more. And I think me personally, that played a role. And then obviously winning games my senior year as a team, we won the conference championship, and it just was a culmination of a lot leading up to my senior year, both individually and as a team. Yeah. That really was the result of just hard work and determination, again, as a team, that led to success.
Yeah. So I guess you get to like about to graduate, or leading up to graduation, you're thinking, hey, this is possible. like, how does that work to go, like, are agents coming to you? Like, what is that scene like in the years that you were doing it?
Yeah, I mean, as you kind of finish up, or during your senior year, as you finish up your senior year, you start to get interest from agents. But agents are going to tell you what you want to hear because they're hoping to be hired.
Yeah.
So you kind of learn, okay, I'm not just going to listen to what the agent says. So I'm going to kind of just continue to develop. And in my the spring after my senior year, spring after my senior season, I went to Nashville and trained and got invited to the Senior Bowl, invited to the Combine. And, looking back, it was just kind of a blur because it was just one thing after the other. Yeah. And you just kind of put your head down knowing, all right, I'm going to give it my all each day, and then look up at the draft, which was, I think, in April, and see what happens. And so, sure enough, just kind of put my head down through that spring, went through the different steps, post senior season, pre-draft, specifically the Senior Bowl and the Combine. And then, sure enough, 2006 draft, 4th round, get drafted by the New England Patriots.
Yeah. That's like, wow, right?
Yeah,
Look back,
it was,
like,
wow.
We're here. Whoa, this is amazing.
Yeah.
What's the Combine like? When you go in there, I know you've prepared this I guess some people have prepared their entire lives to get there, and you get there and you're like, wow, I kind of have one shot to show everyone what I can really do. Yeah,
in the moment, obviously, it's a huge honor to be able to go. Mm-hmm. It's a huge honor to be amongst, the best in college football that year. It's a huge honor to kind of just see where you stack up in terms of the 40, in terms of bench press. It's kind of, for a competitor, which obviously everyone there is, it's kind of a really cool moment where you're like, all right, let's, it's not football, but it's obviously kind of athleticism and all these important marks that, you're trying to achieve. So in the moment, that's what you felt. Looking back, you sit there and you go, man, NFL's a business. Literally you line up in your underwear, or in boxer briefs, and you walk across the stage and you stand there with nothing but boxers on, posing, and looking back, it's like, man, you're a number
at
a cow,
that point,
right? You're just like is this person an asset for us? What are they worth to us?
Yeah.
And so as I reflect back on that time, it really something you miss in the moment because you're in the moment. But as you reflect, it was kind of the first signal that I got where you go, okay, NFL is clearly a business. It's what can you do for these coaches and these teams, and it's just they're there to assess you. Yeah.
Where are you when you get that phone call to be drafted?
I was with my family. We were watching the draft on TV.
Yeah.
It was, at the time there was 2 days of the draft. I think rounds 1 through 3 were on the first day, 4 through 7 were on the second day. So we watched the first day, even though it wasn't likely I was going to go on the first day. So early Sunday morning is day 2, and I'm with some family and friends at my house. I would say it was an informal party, just a gathering to kind of see what happened. And sure enough, early in the morning, or early in the draft, I think it was 10 a.m. or so. My phone rings, and obviously, it wasn't totally unexpected, but you're not exactly, watching your phone for 4 hours either. Yeah,
it's actually ringing.
Yeah, so it rings, and you're kind of, your nature is to look up at the screen and go, okay, who's picking? Who is this going to be on the other end of the phone? And I don't remember if the Patriots were on the screen yet, but obviously
because there's a little delay.
And then obviously when you do answer, find out it's the Patriots, and shortly after, your name pops up, and they talk about you. You see your highlights, and
it's crazy, isn't it?
You give hugs, you cheer, and it's kind of a cool moment, especially to be able to spend it at my parents' home and with friends. To kind of be in that moment was cool.
Yeah, Dad was there with you as well.
Yep.
Yeah. That must be so cool. Like, just to have those moments. I fortunate my dad was, we played a lot of golf together and was around for tournaments, and I kind of, just having him there was special, right?
Yeah.
Cool, and Mum too. But when you get that phone call, that's when the show starts, isn't it? That's when you really have to get to work.
Well, exactly. It's a life-changing event. It's both celebratory because it's kind of the payoff to what you've done, but at the same time, it's like, all right, now it's time to go.
You've been given the opportunity. Now you need to prove yourself and work.
And so, my dad and I shared a hug that day that I'll never forget, and my wife, girlfriend at the time, was in the room, so to be able to share that kind of life moment with her, that she was a part of that, now we're married and have kids, was special for me too, looking back.
Who were you a fan of, like NFL teams growing up?
Growing up, it was the 49ers. Okay. I was a big Steve Young, Jerry Rice fan. It was most people around Oklahoma were Cowboys fans, and if at the time the 49ers and the Cowboys were kind of rivals, but I leaned toward the 49ers, and as a result, kind of had a disdain for the Cowboys. But yeah, I mean, I will say once you get to the NFL though, it's kind of all allegiance are thrown out the window. Right.
Yeah, you're there to do a job, aren't you? It doesn't matter. Yeah. Even if you're a lifelong fan of a player, you're probably facing up against them in a year or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Field.
Yeah.
So, I guess you get drafted and you head up to New England. Is it miserable, freezing cold?
It was
actually
May.
Not too bad?
Yeah, it was May. So the summer was about to start. So I don't remember it being cold yet. But I do remember it was just frankly, it was just a very uncomfortable feeling. I mean, I'd lived in Tulsa my whole life, literally through college, and so to kind of to leave the nest, so to speak, and be out on my own was part of the experience. But you're walking into arguably a very successful football franchise. You walk into a room with Tom Brady, you walk into a room with Bill Belichick, and you're wide-eyed. Yeah. And it was kind of a blur because you're just kind of going, man, what is going on around me? And you're taking it all in. And meanwhile, trying to compete, for a roster spot, as well. So,
what was the jump, I guess, like from being at Tulsa and the program? Like, how much of a difference is it going to New England from Tulsa? With just obviously the facilities are incredibly different, right? But I mean, just everything centered around diet, workouts, like. How was that?
Well, I think about what you would expect. You've got a roster full of teammates, and you got a whole organization totally focused on winning football games, and so everything is set up around whether it be the food that we eat, the workout facilities, like you said. It's just a well-oiled machine that you step into day one, and then on the field. Again, just what you would expect. Everyone's bigger and better and faster, and the playbook's more complicated. And it really takes full attention to a full-time job versus as a student athlete, it's okay. Sometimes you have to do schoolwork, and then sometimes you focus on football. Whereas when you make the jump, there's no schoolwork. It's you're both kind of mental and physical work relates around football and developing as a football player, and that's it.
Was there anyone, obviously Belichick and Brady, but was there anyone when you walked into the room and you were like, wow, that guy's an absolute man mountain, how does he move so fast? Is there anyone that shocked you like that? Or even on the field, I guess, when you were playing? Yeah, I
mean, I would say my rookie year, I think just generally everybody. It's like you see... You line up against Mike Vrabel and you say, okay, yeah, Mike Vrabel's a big guy, but then when he's lined up against you, he just looks like a monster, and he's on paper he's not the biggest guy on the field. And then as I went through my career, there are definitely players that you watch that you just go, holy cow, watching Adrian Peterson run the football and just work out physically. I tell a story. We'd be running half gassers, which down and back across the field, and I'd be dying. We'd have to do 16 of them, and I'd look over, and Adrian would have a dip in his mouth and just
chilling,
hardly breathing. And I'm like, man, that's just not even it. Another one that comes to mind. Watching Randy Moss play when he came to New England. Yeah. Just how smooth and fluid and just gifted he was as a player. But he was, he's also a big guy. But just watching him move with ease. And then my last year in the league was 2011 with the Patriots again. I came back to New England, and watching Gronk and Aaron Hernandez play tight end was just eye-opening because they were very different players, but just so gifted, both of them, athletically, physically, for their size, the way they moved. Yeah. It was just those are kind of the I'm sure there's more, but in terms of the moments where I just caught myself, just wide-eyed, those are the ones that jump out.
That's mad, isn't it? Just to be there on the sideline or on the same field, just like, and seeing that in action. I mean, great to see it on TV, but you really get that experience in, when you're on the field and you're listening to the hits and you're hearing everything, and you're like, I asked, I played golf with Derek Anderson once, and I asked him, so what was the biggest hit that you ever took? And he's like, some lineman hit me like right in the sternum with a helmet, and I was like wincing, and then he's like, it was like fourth down, so it didn't matter. And then they turned the ball over, and he's like on the sideline wincing. He's like, got to go back out there. He's like, I threw it in the dirt 3 times. Like I couldn't breathe. I couldn't take it. And he's 6'5", big guy as well. I'm like, it's not something I want to stand in front of. Someone's running at you the size of a fridge, and you at speed, and just run you over.
Totally.
No thanks.
Yeah, I remember we were playing at Chicago, I think it was, and Julius Peppers was a defensive end, and he's just a huge human. And I remember getting a 3-point stance, lining up against him, thinking I'm about to block this guy, and I'm thinking to myself, I should not be doing this. I'm going to do my best, but this is not a good idea. This is
not healthy. Yeah.
Why did my coaches put me in this situation? But needless to say, I literally hung on for dear life. I think I just grabbed his jersey and held on.
Which, that's you dare to do a job, right? You got to at least try.
That's what you got to do.
So, like you mentioned, last year was in 2011. From 2006 to 2011, what was, I guess, any like super standout moments that you look back on and just like, that was just, if I could get to live one of those days again, what would you go to?
I would say on the football field, my third year in the league was kind of my first year where I got significant playing time, and our first game was at Lambeau Field in Green Bay, Monday Night Football, and I had I think 3 or 4 catches that night, and it really that moment that night just on the stage that we were with it being Monday Night Football at Green Bay. It was really a culmination of the payoff of like what it took to get to that moment, and that was certainly, we lost the game, but personally that was a feeling I'll never forget. Off the field, when I look that span of years, I think the thing that stands out to me is how fortunate I feel being able to kind of jump around the country. It didn't feel fortunate during the time because it's kind of a pain to move.
Yeah.
But being able to live in Boston and Philadelphia and Minneapolis and short time in Cincinnati, just being able to kind of experience different parts of the country, different people, different ways of doing things, getting out of my comfort zone here in Oklahoma. I think that has played a huge role in shaping who I am today. And so, off the field, that's certainly something I'm fortunate to have experienced is just that ability to do that.
Different fandoms as well. For some people it's life and death, right? Like you go to Philly, I'm sure I have some friends who live in Philly and they're like, it's football and baseball and nothing else matters.
Yeah. I think we had some friends come visit us in Philadelphia, and I was playing at the time, and the friends asked my wife, well, how come you're not wearing anything, with Garrett's name on it?
Yeah.
She's like, are you kidding me? If he screws up and the fans find out who I am, I don't want to know what that's going to be like. So
right, I wouldn't want to do that. She
was undercover for that reason because, they love their teams and very passionate, and obviously they don't have they're not hesitant to show how passionate they are.
No, they don't hold back, do they?
They don't hold back.
So as all good things have to come to an end, 2011 comes, and I guess, how does that, do you retire or do they say we don't need you anymore?
I would say it's somewhat mutual.
Yeah.
My career wasn't exactly kind of on the trajectory upward, but I did halfway through the season in 2011, I was now married and went to my wife and I said, hey, I think this is my 6th year. And I said, I think I'm ready. Let's move on after this. And so, together we decided that grad school would be the next first step, post football. It's kind of serve as a bridge between, football and whatever's next. Right. I didn't know at the time. And actually started studying for the GMAT halfway through the year. I'd come home, after practice and study during the evening. And so there was somewhat of a my choice to quote unquote retire.
Yeah.
But again,
you were being smart and planning, thinking it's coming. Yeah. I may as well plan. Let's figure this out.
Right.
So when you're in the NFL then, and when you got your season coming on, are you doing like? What other engagements are you getting into outside of football, right? I'm sure people are coming at you like most people do when they see a friend or see someone they know that has money like this. Hey, invest in this, right? And every athlete that's had some success at least has that experience. are you getting into anything like that? Kind of just little business stuff? Like, what were your interests off the field?
Yeah, so you're exactly right. I mean, obviously you get pinged to invest in different things, and then some of them are more active than others. There's obviously real estate, which you kind of just put money
Fairly
away.
Easy to do, yeah.
But then, the one opportunity my wife and I jumped on that we were more proactive in was a fitness franchise. It's called Pure Bar. We opened it in 2010. There's several in Oklahoma now. At the time, I think we were the 18th franchise. We brought it to Dallas, where our off-season home was. So in 2010, we opened Pure Bar in Dallas. And my wife kind of handled the day to day. I was still playing, so we were back and forth. But for me personally, it kind of gave me that insight, or that little glimpse into running a business, and specifically kind of showed me that the entrepreneurial side of business was something that I kind of was very interested in and enjoyed. So when I went to grad school, we ended up selling the fitness, the studio. But again, that kind of, even though I was still playing, that kind of glimpse of the business world was a good kind of segue, or maybe piqued my interest a little bit in what that could look like, long term as a career.
Right. Yeah. And having a franchise, right, it's a good experience because they've set you up, right. They kind of give you the model, and then they say, right, basically this is it's not foolproof, but you have a plan, don't you? It's not like, hey, here's a business, go start it on your own.
Yeah, exactly.
It's kind of a nice, easier way to start. And I'm sure your wife had a huge passion for fitness as well, right? You don't start a business like that without passion for fitness. And I mean, now we have 2 or 3 we have one in Edmond, I think one in Oklahoma City. I'm sure Tulsa probably has one too. Well, it's probably a nice, especially with it being kind of like probably with your wife taking care of you. It was more of a part-time thing for you, kind of, I guess. But it's you being proactive, aren't you? You're learning things, and when you sell it and you go to grad school, you have that life experience of running a business in a huge market.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. And going through the process of hiring staff, going through the process of reconciling the books, and kind of just, again, it was kind of a glimpse where it wasn't huge stakes. Obviously it was a significant investment for us, but it wasn't huge stakes in terms of scope. And so you could touch all these different aspects of business, whether it be marketing, whether it be strategy, whether it be how do you handle, issues that come up with staff, how do you handle training, like you said, it's franchising. So you're not just on your own figuring everything out, but as a small business owner, you do get to touch so many different aspects of business that then, were helpful for me as I kind of transitioned out of football to figure out what I wanted to do next.
Yeah. So grad school then, why did you choose Northwestern for grad school, right?
Yeah.
Why did you choose Northwestern?
Well, I mean, really I didn't know what I wanted to do next, but I knew kind of we had the option. I wanted the optionality to kind of go wherever. Okay. And so Northwestern Kellogs School of Business is one of the top MBA programs in the country. And so I knew, okay, if I can get in there, we go spend 2 years there, then I'll have options. Kind of, they have brand value, so to speak, across the country.
The internships that are coming out of that, or the opportunities that are coming out of that, are much better as if we were to go to wherever else that's not so recognized. Even if you were to come home and go to TU.
Exactly. And so we were living in Dallas, and I just kind of assumed I would check the box of an MBA and go to SMU, and SMU is a great school, so I don't mean to say it's not, but I also just, it was more the easier path to just say, all right, we'll just go get my MBA at SMU, and then we'll go from there. But when I was playing in New England, I actually had a buddy who had come out to Harvard to interview. He was doing an MBA, and he was doing his interviews for Harvard HBS, and he kind of said, because I just kind of assumed, well, all I've done is played football. You know what? Yeah. These programs aren't really going to be interesting to me. That's all I have on my resume. And he kind of is the one that opened my eyes to say, well, with your background, they actually would be interested, and so you should kind of aim higher, so to speak, and seek out these top programs. And then, sure enough, got accepted to Northwestern. And
that competitive side of growing up playing football comes out in you in business, because you're like, when someone says, you have to apply, right? Yeah. Like, I got to work for this now, right? And then you're like, I don't want to just be the average person in the class. Like, I want to knock it out of the park and be the best one there.
Yeah, no question. And I happened to have a little bit of foresight, when in my last year at New England, I was released by the team in January before our first playoff game, and before leaving Coach Belichick's office, I actually asked him if he'd write me a recommendation for grad school, and he did. And so, I'd like to think that helped me get into Northwestern. But yeah, to your point, I mean, obviously when you're writing essays, when you're taking the GMAT, those all feel competitive because those are all factors that go into the assessment of are you good enough to get in. And so as a former athlete, as a competitor, I was all in on doing the best I could.
So go to Northwestern. You move out there as well.
Yep.
So you're out there for 2 years. You do the grad school, and at that point, with the business from Pure Bar experience, are you thinking I'm going to open up my own, or are you like actively looking for other franchises to open? Thinking I'm having kids, we're probably going to move home anyway.
Yeah, it was. I kind of went in without a specific plan. Mm-hmm. I wrote some essays saying I wanted to go into finance, some that I wanted to go into consulting. But to your point, married at this point, obviously, as I mentioned, and then we welcome our first kid while we're living in Chicago, going to Northwestern. And so, when you have a wife and a kid, the risk spectrum changes somewhat, right? Yeah. Obviously, there's time at home that is important to me. There's finances that are important to me in terms of what you're willing to risk, and so that eliminated some roads just because of life circumstance. And ultimately ended up going into finance, going into wealth management and working for Goldman Sachs out of their Dallas office. Again, mm-hmm. Went back to Dallas, but fortunate that the doors, or going to Kellogg, going and getting my MBA, obviously played a role in opening the doors that led me to Goldman Sachs.
So the day that I played golf with Derek Anderson, his real good buddy of his is Bill Swancutt. Bill works at Goldman Sachs.
Okay.
And I'm just like, and Bill, again, they both played at Oregon together, so they've been buddies for a long time.
Yeah.
Bill can't play golf to save his life. Derek can play golf. And Bill's never going to hear this, so I'd probably tell it to him his face if I saw him again. But
work on your golf game, Bill.
Yeah, he needs to, yeah. But he worked at Goldman Sachs. And I was like, oh, there must be a connection with, like, I mean, when you're in that arena, right, you're in finance, and it's finance at the time, but it's also sales, isn't it? And you have to build a relationship. And there's nothing better for a company that says, hey, we have some ex-NFL players. They've got some great stories. Come and, hang out, but they can also do the work too.
Yeah.
I assume that you and Bill aren't the only ones who went to work for Goldman Sachs.
Well, yeah, and I think it's relationship based. It's again that competitive mm-hmm. nature that it requires. Because you're right, it's a sales job, and it's actually why I ended up not enjoying it was because it was kind of primarily business development, and I got in it hoping it was primarily finance.
Right.
There's certainly part of that's finance, but no, I think you're right. I think. Firms like Goldman are drawn to athletes
mm-hmm.
For that reason. So to your point, likely not a coincidence that you play golf with a former athlete that works at Goldman.
Yeah, I think he just plays golf every day. Yeah. Which, I mean, sign me up.
Well
I would be doing that too.
Well
if I could retire and play golf every day.
He's made it, as they say.
He's doing just fine. Yeah. So how do you get from, I guess, Goldman Sachs to Tulsa then?
Yeah. So. Really, so from Dallas, we covered the Tulsa market. We covered mm-hmm. all of Oklahoma. And so, being from Oklahoma, I spent a lot of my time.
Gotcha.
Excuse me. Yeah. I spent a lot of my time back in Oklahoma, trying to build my business or business development. And through that came relationships. And also through that, as I mentioned, came my desire to no longer work for Goldman. And mm-hmm. so I kind of started the process of thinking about how I was going to transition out. I actually spent some time up in Oregon, thinking and hoping I was going to end up taking a job with Nike.
Yeah.
My wife and I flew up there, spent some time up there, and ultimately decided it was just too far from what we consider home.
Right.
She's from Dallas. I'm obviously from Oklahoma. And so really from there, a relationship with the owner and founder of RibCrib is what stemmed my move back to Tulsa. Mm-hmm. I'd voiced to him I was looking to leave, and he just kind of generically said, well, hey, if you want to come back to Tulsa, if you want to come back home, I'll find a spot for you. And it was a risk on his part, and it was a risk on my part to say, all right, let's just kind of see where this goes.
Yeah.
But obviously there was excitement in coming back home. There was comfort in knowing what life was like in Tulsa. My wife went to TU, so she knew what life was like in Tulsa.
Yeah.
And then Clearly, the people at RibCrib, which represent really the people of Oklahoma,
right,
just being good people and a great culture, welcoming, warm, everything that's great about Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Obviously was attractive in terms of quote unquote coming back home.
Yeah. So come to RibCrib, obviously, based in Tulsa and founded in Tulsa. I guess coming up here with really no idea what you wanted, what they have for you to do, right? You're just kind of like, oh, we'll just figure it out as we go along. I mean, yeah. Well, I guess what year was that, and how long have you been there for?
Yeah, so that was 2017.
Okay.
So I graduated. I came out of grad school in 2014. Spent 3 years with Goldman, and then in 2017 is when I moved back to Tulsa. And it really was a little bit of an unknown in terms of how I would fit, both for me and for them.
Yeah.
So my first role was with our new concept that opened in 2018, Society Burger, and basically, came in day one and almost on day two they said, hey, we're thinking about doing a burger concept. Why don't you lead this project? And the timing was extremely fortunate for me because I could kind of step aside from the RibCrib business, which was obviously our core business. I think we started in 1992, so we were in year 25 at that point.
Yeah.
So I lead the project to launch Society Burger and really learn the restaurant business from the ground up in terms of menu development, real estate, design, everything that goes into starting a restaurant. I was able to touch and feel. And then once we got Society opened, I was named VP of Strategy for the RibCrib side for the whole company, and spent some time kind of rethinking how we approach marketing, how we approach operations. And then fast forward another year, in May of 2019, Brett, our chairman and founder, named me president of the company. We've since opened a second society, so we are a multi-unit, multi-concept company, and changed our name to Chandler Hospitality Group. Brett Chandler, our founder, named after him. So.
Yeah,
that's the short version. But
and not been in the restaurant industry before this.
I never have. No, no. It was. I tell people, the restaurant business is very complex, but at the same time, it's something we all understand because as diners, we know what restaurants are trying to accomplish, right? I mean, that's not to say it's certainly a complex business, and there's a lot that goes into it, but it's not a chemical engineering, widget making company, where you need kind of a very technical skill. There's a lot of creative, there's a lot of thought that goes into restaurants, but ultimately you're trying to create an experience for a diner that makes them want to come back. And it's kind of that simple. And so understanding that, even though I didn't have prior restaurant experience, I certainly had a grasp for what we were trying to accomplish as a company.
Doubt. Yeah. And with your travels, right, in all the different cities you've been to, no doubt you've been into certain concepts that you think, oh, I don't like that, but I love this. Let's bring in a little bit of this, and you pull from those experiences to think, hang on, how can we create a great diner experience and with great food, and you build that concept, right? That's the great thing about travel.
Yeah, exactly. And so when they say, hey, we want to start a new burger joint, obviously my head goes to, oh, I've been to 5 great burger joints. What can we draw from those that I think guests in Tulsa would like? And then obviously we built Society around that idea.
Yeah. That must be so much fun. I mean, it's so different, right? And I'm sure every day was different with coming from Goldman and just that journey that you've had. You're doing all that kind of stuff at Goldman, and then you come to a restaurant industry and like, oh, now I'm building something for like the user experience that I want, right? That I think, and others, you've been a consumer of this for so long. You've always gone to restaurants growing up. Like, oh, now I get to develop something. It's more freeing, and like you probably kind of have a lot more creativity on your side rather than what you were doing at Goldman. Yeah,
exactly. I would describe it as fun. There wasn't a lot that was fun at Goldman. I think it's finance is certainly a necessary evil in a lot of ways, but I wouldn't use the word fun to describe it. Whereas, creating concepts and opening restaurants, coming up with menu changes at RibCrib, coming up with limited time offers, LTOs at RibCrib, doing the R&D, trying things in the kitchen.
Yeah.
I say that and it's like, well, that'd be fun. It's like, it is fun.
And then you go and do it and you try it and you figure out, okay, if it works, great. If it doesn't, then we'll try something else.
Yeah,
there's no, like, I guess the margins aren't massive for error when you're just trying a few things at one location.
Yeah, exactly. And I was fortunate to walk into a very stable company, built on nearly 60 restaurants. So, when we try something new, the risk is certainly there, but we also have a stable brain behind us that we're able to take those risks. But and I think the culmination is the payoff, so to speak, is creating something and then going to a restaurant and seeing people enjoy it, whether that be at Society or at RibCrib. It's just really cool seeing people enjoy something that you can all the time, thought, and effort that's gone into it. Behind the scenes, and then seeing the payoff of actually the community or the customer really enjoying the experience.
Yeah. So being president CEO now, I guess is your kind of like plan and vision? Is it to open up different concepts, or just that kind of like to push now the society alongside that, more and grow that, or is it to do multiple? Like different concept, meaning like pizza, ice cream, whatever.
Yeah, it's kind of multifaceted. I think when I look at the assets of our company, obviously, we're coming up on 30 years of RibCrib and the brand that we've created with RibCrib and now Society are certainly assets. And then so the question is, what do we do with those? And with RibCrib, our growth strategy right now is on franchising. In January, we just opened a new unit in Panama City, Florida, with a multi-unit franchisee there. We signed another multi-unit franchise agreement in Alabama and in the Mobile area. And so we're leaning into franchising, which is something we've done historically. We have, of our 55 RibCribs, 10 of them are franchise units.
Okay.
So we understand the franchisor or franchisee relationship. The other growth is obviously multi-concept. We've done it with Society. We're opening a taco concept in Tulsa in July.
Okay.
Hopefully, we're working on construction now, so that's certainly going to come. And then from there, potential acquisition. Because when I think about our assets, we have a group of people that have run restaurants for 30 years. We happen to be running the brands we've created, but I also think we can add value to other brands as well.
Gotcha.
And so growth via potential acquisition is certainly on the table too. And so those together kind of make up our long-term growth strategy.
Yeah. Again, super exciting, right? Because you're diving into different avenues and spreading the RibCrib name across the nation. I mean, Florida's big, obviously Alabama's awesome, and it's just moving in the right direction, and I'm sure you've navigated the pandemic and all that nonsense that had to happen, and I can't imagine how stressful that was being a business owner and a CEO, and you've got so many mouths to take care of, right? I mean, not no pun intended, but you have families of servers. I mean, that's a giant. There's a lot of stress to deal with, right? And you got to deal with. So you're just looking at finances and thinking, wow, are we going to be able to open anytime soon? And I guess we can touch a little bit on that. What was your, I guess, how was that transition for you? To go into online more and takeout more, and what's that like?
Yeah, the pandemic could and probably should be its own podcast, because it's just so complex, and the range of emotions in the last 12 to 14 months has just been crazy. But how I would summarize it is, going into the pandemic, we had nearly 2,000 employees, and then kind of, let's pick a date, March 20th. Yeah. When sales are literally 40%, which I say 40%. It's actually not bad compared to a lot of other restaurants. We had 40% sales, and we're sitting here going, well, okay, I don't know this business model. So. Clearly, we had to cut staff. We had to cut salaries, and it was just pure survival mode, almost in an instant, because you didn't know what the end looked like. Is this what our reality is for 6 months? If so, then how do we operate under this reality? And I think that was the biggest unknown, kind of at the bottom, was just how long is this going to last?
Yeah.
And you had to assume it wasn't going to be quick, otherwise, you won't survive. And sure enough, I think again, kind of summarizing last year, we benefited from the fact that we're barbecue, right? People are very familiar and used to taking us, as a takeout food, and that's really what I would say helped us thrive through 2020 was the fact that our takeout business was so strong going into the pandemic.
Gotcha. In
addition to that, we had already put several wheels in motion in terms of transforming our technology. Partnering with third-party delivery companies was already in motion. In improving and enhancing our online ordering experience was already in motion. Adding a loyalty program and improving our app was already in motion. And so, clearly, as it did for many, when 2020 happened, it just accelerated each of those projects and basically made us go, okay, we got to go now because this is what we need to do to survive 2020 and also what we need to do to make sure we survive long term. And that's obviously enhance our technology and our digital experience, as they call it. So, we partnered with Thanks, we partnered with Olo. These are obviously restaurant-specific companies, but again, those partnerships have helped transform our business to create a better experience for the customer, and obviously, kind of as we talked about earlier, how do we create an experience worth coming back for? And certainly technology plays a huge part in that in this day and age.
Yeah. I guess you probably drew from your team experiences growing up as a kid and through the NFL, right? When you're running a company, like you mentioned earlier, you're trying to bring it into business as best as you can. When you have moments of chaos, there are no better opportunities to bring the team together and build a better team bond and relationship with management, stores, whatever it is. Like, that must have been kind of fun to... And kind of like we've been in chaotic moments on the field or whatever, like let's see if we can transition the same plan into building and surviving as a business.
Yeah, I think you're wise to point that out because I don't think it's something I would have necessarily recognized or been able to put a finger on had we not gone through 2020. But I almost feel some guilt in saying this, but in some ways I feel fortunate to be in the position that I was in. Obviously I'm not happy the pandemic happened.
Of course,
but given the pandemic happened, I feel fortunate that I was in my seat as a CEO leading a company.
Right.
And I think to your point, having been in stressful situations, having watched coaches handle stressful situations, I think, meaning specifically, being in a football game and having a 300-pound guy lined up against you, that's a stressful situation. And I think you have to learn to kind of, understand that there's only so much you can control. That by panicking, that's not going to help anything. And then fast forward to 2020, obviously I find myself leading a big company and people looking at me, relying on me to kind of be the voice of reason, to stay calm, to lead the way. And I think all those things I had experienced in sports, all those things I had watched my coaches do, both good and bad, kind of came to this moment in 2020 where it was like, all right, all eyes on you. Here's your chance as a young CEO to kind of lead us through this. And I feel fortunate to where we are after 2020, and I also feel fortunate for the team that was around me during 2020 because as much as there were eyes on me, certainly I relied heavily on my teammates.
Because you're drawing from, like you said, you've only been in the restaurant business, like 4 years or 3 years at that point.
Yeah.
You're drawing from, you're doing what all great leaders do and finding better help, right? Like if I don't know this answer, I'm going to find the best person that does. And you mentioned staying calm. I mean, you were coached under Bill Belichick. He was one of the most stoic people ever, right? It's like, we'll just figure it out. Like it's everything's under control. Yeah. There's no one knows what's going on in his head, and it's it's like the iceberg. But
he seems so unfazed,
right?
I mean, in every moment.
So awesome. So I guess finishing up then, what are the things I guess that you draw from in your time in the NFL? Like you mentioned, under great leadership and bad leadership, you see the good and the bad things that coaches do. What are the things I guess that you really draw from now as a leader in your kind of personal being the president and CEO?
Well, I think something that comes back to me is the fact that respect has to be earned. I had coaches who had earned respect and therefore coached that way. I had others who had not earned respect, but just felt like because they were coach, you had to respect them.
Right.
And I think that's a huge failure in management, is to assume just because your title says XYZ means that you should be respected. And I think that's one approach I try to take in my role, is to assume, hey, I need to earn our team's respect. I can't just say, I'm the president, I'm the CEO.
It's my way or the highway.
It's my way or the highway. And really that comes from, I'm not going to name names, but that comes from direct experiences with specific coaches where I said, man, he failed in that instance because he just thought he should be respected. And that's just, human nature, whether it be sports, business, or other situations. That's just not how it works.
Yeah. It's, I mean, I don't really think I've had that many situations myself, but I do see it in my great friend of mine who's a golf coach now, and the stuff that he's learning, and same thing that you did, right? You ask help and you ask for advice and you just build on that. And that's one thing I think people might struggle with too, is being humble enough to ask for help, right? And ask for advice when when you've got a title that says CEO and everyone's looking at you to think this guy should know everything. You're like, oh, hang on a second. This guy who's been doing this for 50, 40 years has way more experience than me. Let's go figure out, you pick the brain of someone, don't you? And that's something that I think all great leaders do, is they're not scared to ask for outside help and advice. And, you build a council of people that, let's come together and let's make a collective decision. Or, you draw from that, okay, you might make the end decision, but you've drawn from a panel of people that, you value their opinion.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. And something that resonates with me, or that I think about, is when our chairman just a few years ago came to me and said, do you think you're ready to be president? My answer was yes, but my answer was yes because this is my team.
I got a foundation behind me.
This is my team. I mean, our the three guys right under me, cumulatively have nearly 90 years of restaurant experience, and with that team, that's why I and our team as a whole is able to succeed.
Well, I guess, exciting times now that, we're seeing the back of the pandemic and people are comfortable going outside, they've had their shots or whatever, they're coming in, there's no mask mandate now. I'm sure it's exciting to go with what you mentioned, a new taco place opening up, Society Burger is going to be opening up, and building the brand as the franchise that already is RibCrib. It's going to be an exciting next few years.
Well, I'd like to think so.
Yeah.
It's not. I think restaurants can be boring if you operate in a boring way, but it's certainly not my intent to not go for more.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, mate, I really appreciate you coming down. It means a lot to have you in here and to share your story. And of something that, like you said, RibCrib it is a reflection of Oklahoma people, isn't it? That's, it is Oklahoma people that is running it clearly, and everyone else that's in the stores. So I really appreciate you coming down and sharing that story. For everyone listening, I guess what would be the best way to get in touch, follow you, follow RibCrib? Like, what's the kind of social channels or websites?
Yeah, ribcrib.com is our website. Obviously, from there you can find all our social media platforms. We've got. You put me on the spot. I wish I could tell you how many locations in Oklahoma we have, but if you're in Oklahoma, you can find one within 30 minutes. That would be my guess. We're all over the state. Proud, like you said, proud to be as a company. Started in Tulsa, in kind of Oklahoma through and through, and then obviously in Tulsa we've got two locations for Society Burger and a taco concept coming later this summer to be on the lookout for.
Yeah, awesome. Well, mate, again, thanks for coming down. For everyone listening, I'll post the links to the website and stuff down in the description. And we'll catch you next episode. Cheers. This podcast is presented by the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, telling an Oklahoma story through its people since 1927. For more information on the Hall of Fame, go to www.oklahomahof.com and follow them on Instagram for daily updates at oklahomahof. Also, huge shout out to RCB Bank for jumping on board to be a sponsor. RCB Bank's loan promotion is here for a limited time. Head into any of their 40 Oklahoma locations to get as low as 1.79 APR on your next car, boat, camper, or ATV. Apply online at rcbbank.com. RCB Bank, that's my bank. Rate and finance with approved credit. Restrictions apply. And member FDIC. Huge shout out to my sponsors. Thank you for listening. We'll catch you next episode. Cheers.
Thank you for listening. We are inspired by those around us and hope that you are too. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review so we can keep telling your stories. For more great Oklahoma content, follow This is Oklahoma on Facebook and Instagram.